Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Muñoz.
I'm Connor Lofdahl.
I'm Thomas Laubhan.
I'm Elvis Moreno.
And I'm Ian Calhoun.
And we are the University of North Texas 1 o'clock lab band trombone section.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
So you just heard us play Scott Whitfield's arrangement of The Moon Train, which is a Woody Shaw tune he wrote back in the 70s. Now, not only is that tune itself very challenging, but the arrangement he did is probably the hardest trombone solo commercially available. We all individually struggled with a bunch of things, and we thought it would be a good idea if we presented these concepts that we struggled with to all of you, so that in this time of isolation that you're not playing with your peers, you can maybe still get some information and learn something about playing in this ensemble setting. So who would like to go first, talking about what they individually struggled with when preparing this solo?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So my big thing, I played the lowest bass trombone part, and since this solo is harmonized, I had the lowest part, and I have all these long bebop lines, but since it's lower, I have to move my slide a lot more, and that was really challenging because all the weight has to be in your left arm, and then the right arm should just be free to move around. But when you're playing it, I think it was 240 with all these lines, it could be a challenge. So one really challenging line was, where is it? It's in the second chorus. So this solo is 3 choruses and 8 bars, but the second chorus, there's this line, it's F25, where I'm going to play it just out of context. So this is how it goes. So it's a lot of movement right here and a lot of movement, in the middle of the staff, which is really hard. It took me a long time to get that down, and at this point, it's still a little hazy. So another hard one. I just had to kind of conceptualize this, but it's right at the beginning of the second chorus. We have that wasn't the best example, but I have to go. I have to go ba ba da doo da da doo da, and sometimes I don't make it all the way to fourth. I just go ba da 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 da. So I thought I had to hit fourth, and it was critical that I hit it, but I found out that if you just kind of, it should be fine. And then the rest of it is easier. Another part of it is when you're doing all these fast movements that are really long, turning pages can become even more of a nightmare. It's already a nightmare because the soli is like 4 pages, 5 pages. But what helped for me is memorizing it. As soon as I memorized the soli, I didn't have to worry about. It's a lot easier just to have it right here, so you don't have to worry about extending your right arm, changing it, and then going back to playing. But that's it for me. It's just really just having the coordination in your right arm. And once you memorize the solo, or at least your part in the soli, it's much easier to know exactly where you need to go. You're not relying on the music so much.
Right. So when you learned it, did you learn it with all of the? When you first learned it, did you learn it with all of the stuff you could play on the trigger, or did you learn it just in the regular natural slide positions first?
First, I learned it with the natural positions.
Okay. Does that help you Does that help you get it in your ear more?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Definitely. And, there are a few examples. I know someone else will talk about this, but there were a few times where I used alternate positions, and that helped a lot. But other than that, it was all natural positions.
Okay. But now you're using, C in first, or maybe B flat in third.
There's a few cases. Yeah. Near the end of the third chorus, I have to go C, D flat, C, B flat. Now you can go, da-da-da-da. You could do that, or you can do, first trigger, second trigger, first trigger, open. Yeah, that's really the only case where I really use the triggers a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I know when I play bass trombone that I'm, as a naturally tenor trombone player, I'm very much inclined to stay away from the trigger when I can. But in something as fast as this, I don't know if it would be more or less beneficial to be using the trigger, and add that extra element of complexity to what you're playing, because it's already hard enough.
Yeah. I'd like to chime in. I'm the opposite end. I always try and use the triggers whenever I can, when it's gonna make my playing smoother. So if you're playing on an independent bass bone, I think it's okay to use the second trigger by itself for a lot of these passages. Not necessarily just in this song, but in any other song, because it gives you the freedom to put notes closer to other partials when typically you'd have to go out to 6th and 7th, or you could just push them out a little bit further, and it makes playing it just a lot together closer to the high range and a tenor trombone.
Well, the big thing so this is the lowest part. I don't know what the fourth part's like, because maybe you'll have to do some G flat trigger stuff, but I do use the F trigger a lot, but it's mostly for C's and F's, lower F's. I don't really ever have to use the G flat trigger at all. Looking at the music now, I can only see one case where I used it, and it was that the C, D flat, C, B flat. Because everything's, if you use the F trigger, everything's pretty much between 1st and 5th position. So.
Okay.
I have something I want to bring up too.
Sure.
So hi guys, I'm Elvis. I think the big question is, how do we play so fast, and how do we get it to sound clean and tight? Personally, I have to do multiple tonguing, and I actually just use a soft double tongue. I don't doodle. I'm not great at it. I don't know. I think Andrew can mess around with doodle tonguing, but personally, I do a soft daga, And whenever I'm working up a passage like this to, at speed, I am a big advocate for playing at half speeds or slower using multiple tonguing. And whatever combination that is for you, I just advise that you do it at a really slow tempo. That way it's just solid. And then you go up by one click at a time every time you play consecutively right until you can play at full tempo. And whether that's double tonguing, single tonguing, dual tonguing, some kind of love child of the three, it's whatever works for you.
If I could add on to that, I forgot to mention one other passage in here.
Go for it.
Near the end of the third chorus, so about multiple tonguing, there's a part where all the bones have like this rhythm. And in my part, I have to go E flat, D flat, C, da da da, and having that ability to move the right arm freely, but also being able to multiple tongue is really helpful. Da 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 da. So yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm probably the only doodle tonguer here. I think. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I can kind of do it, but I don't really do it in this.
In context, sure.
I think that's correct.
But yeah, I agree with Elvis in that no matter what you're doing, you need to start. You need to be doing it when you're playing it slow. So just because it's natural for you to single tongue it when you're playing the passage slow, doesn't mean that you're gonna be single tonguing it when it's at 240 beats a minute.
Yeah.
So you need to start your practice of the passage with whatever style of tonguing it is that you're gonna be using at the full speed that you're gonna play it. So doodle tonguing is unique in that when you're early on in the tempos, it's a little easier, I guess, to distinguish that you're actually doing it. Whereas when you get faster, it kind of becomes like a little ambiguous physically as to whether or not you're doing it. And especially out of the bell, it's not as obvious as a double tongue. So I think when you're practicing dual tonguing specifically, you really need to record yourself doing it as much as possible so that you can learn to hear the difference in articulation between like a fast single tongue or like a soft double tongue and doodle tonguing. I find doodle tonguing to be very good for stuff like this just because it's typically smoother than double tonguing, and it's a little easier for me to put things like accents in when everything is smooth, so I can just pick a note and be like, oh, I want this one to be accentuated, so if everything else is smooth, it's going to sound even more, it's going to pop out even more because of it. But doodle tonguing, most people only really use it for fast jazz stuff. And then they use, double tonguing is a lot of the time used in like classical music. But I've been finding lately in my practice that you can apply a doodle tongue in classical music. The main application of doodle tongue in classical music is for smooth passages, smooth legato passages that you don't want to sound choppy. You know, you want to keep the air moving forward and you want to keep the phrase moving forward, which is also true for jazz and for passages like these. But you don't want a lot of front on each note, you know. You want it to sound like a flute or a saxophone, you know, like pressing down keys with a slur, you know. But unfortunately on trombone, it's not possible for us to slur our lines in the same way that it is a sax player or a clarinet player or something. So I think doodle tonguing is usually the next best alternative for me to achieve that fluidity that woodwind instruments or even trumpets get with buttons or valves.
I feel like that's
Who
a
else
pretty...
would like to... Oh yeah, go ahead, Connor. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think that's a good transition into one of my struggles, which was, I mean, when you first get a piece like this and you bring it home to shed it, and you're trying to get all the notes locked in, and you're trying to get, good, sound and everything, and good articulations for each note, whether it's doodle tonguing, double tonguing, single tonguing, whatever. That's, once you get it locked down by yourself, there's there comes the problem of getting it locked in with your section. And I know that when we came, we got the piece, we were all shedding it at home, and then when we came in for our first sectional, most of the struggles we experienced were the feel wasn't together with the whole section. So like while you're at home and even if you record yourself, you can hear things that sound fine to you, but it may not be locked in with the rest of the section. And so like what's important is finding a balance between, getting the best sound you can get and, getting the best articulations you can get and prioritizing, the time and like the overall, because the overall presentation is going to be the most important thing, which is like, how is it going to sound as a section? And especially if you're a mid player, which I'm playing second. And so mostly the melodies is in the first part, and so what you need to do as a middle player is support and make sure you keep the time feel and the phrasing feeling natural. And so don't get bogged down with playing like da 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 da. You need to you might have to go some things, you might have to prioritize locking in downbeats with your section. That's a good thing, is like if those downbeats are together, especially at a tempo like this, a lot of times the offbeats are gonna naturally lock in. The parts where you really need to play out, those need to be right together. And the eighth note lines definitely need to be together, but I know they definitely need to be speaking. But what's more important is that you don't stick out. You can have the best sound quality and the best articulations, but if you're sticking out, it's not gonna sound good no matter what. So, prioritizing section sound and section feel, and the tempo with the rest of the band too. There's rhythm playing and everything like that. And so you need to be locked into that first and foremost. And so, playing along with recordings is a good way to do this, if they're available, when you're practicing at home and stuff like that, and really kind of getting it locked in from the jump rather than, getting it locked in your own head, but then coming in and struggling with a full band setting.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I think the biggest issue we come to terms with is whenever you say we're trying to swing together or like phrase together, oftentimes when we're like multiple tonguing, I don't think it's an even multiple tongue or doodle tongue or single tongue, and sometimes like the backbeats can come off a little square, especially if you're gonna use like double tonguing. A good way to work on that is to even it out by just practicing your back syllable, whether that's scales or just eighth notes. Just get yourself tonguing with the back end of your tongue, because it's not going to sound as good as the front end of your tongue, because you've been doing that for as long as you've been playing.
So when you're talking about the back syllable, can you like give us a quick, just off the horn, can you give us like a demonstration of like what kind of syllable you're thinking of, and like where in your mouth that you're talking about articulating?
Yeah, so if I'm gonna, most of this I am doing a double tongue, and so I'll go with daga, daga, da 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 da. And you gotta, it really has to just roll off like you're saying the letter R in Spanish or something like that. And to work on that, you can practice by just going ga, 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 and letting the back end of your tongue hitting almost the roof of your mouth to create that, interruption in the air and the sound. And that front of the articulation.
That was one of my big things that I struggled with double tonguing, was keeping the air going, even though I'm like thinking about almost blocking off my air, So I think it's important related to that and related to all kinds of tonguing that you need to keep the air moving constantly like you're playing a whole note. However, your tongue is just interrupting the air. You know, you're not starting new air every note you have. It's just one column, and your tongue is almost like a valve, you know, that interrupts the air, and it keeps the phrase moving forward, and it keeps the sound full between notes. So, you know, even when you're doing something like that, where you're just practicing the back syllable of double tonguing, I think that it's important to keep the other fundamentals like your air in mind.
Yeah, that's something that I always like to think about when I'm playing something like this, is to try to make it really smooth. And so then I always try to keep the air moving, even if I'm articulating, or if I'm articulating something hard or short or long. Like, you just have to keep the air moving and to keep it smooth. And it's like Connor was talking about, is you got to make sure that the accents come out. So like, I'm playing third trombone, and so I'm mainly listening to Andrew playing lead, and so then I'm trying to match his articulation, like his accents and where he's ghosting. So like, an example of that is like in measure 137 and 138. It's like, I'm just gonna accent the top notes more, and then maybe not worry about the bottom notes. So like, so then I'm not trying to make every note exactly even. I'm just trying to keep it flowing, and then kind of bop the tops of those. And then another thing, playing the third trombone part is sometimes a little awkward. So one thing that I really look for in trying to keep it flowing and smooth is I'm trying to find some alternate positions that help me to keep it flowing and not make it jerky. Because like in this lick in measure 175 and 176, I play this F in 6th position, which helps it avoid some jerky. So if I play it in 1st position, it's like which can kind of be a little jerky. So I put it in 6th position instead, which makes it more like circular, and then that's a lot smoother. And so I try to find that as much as possible, try to keep the slide moving in the same direction, which makes the lines a lot smoother. And even though some of these lines in the third trombone part especially are a little bit awkward, it helps me to keep the flow going and to help to lock in with the rest of the section in the groove.
Right, that's something that our professors Tony Baker and Nick Finzer talk about a lot, is keeping the slide moving in the same direction, and like how that helps with being able to play this really fast stuff. Just because it's one less thing for you to think about. Mm-hmm. You know, if your wrist or arm, or however you want to think about it, is moving in one direction, then you can focus more about like things like Thomas was talking about, the shape of the line and how you accent, you know, stuff within the lines. That stuff's much easier if you take that herky-jerky motion out of the equation.
Yeah, because if you're having to go back and forth a lot, then it's gonna shake the horn a lot more, and then that's gonna interrupt. It's gonna mess up your chops. So then you're not able to keep the air flowing the way that we want to keep the lines flowing smoothly.
So if you guys want to hear the rest of that track, including the soli, it should be on Lab 2020, coming out winter, spring, coming out eventually. You know, you never know these days. So thank you all for watching, and please, you know, check out Lab 2020 when it comes out.